when you are embodied yourself, you're actually also allowing the other ones to receive the information that you share and also to reply to that from a safe place, being able to actually invite them also to be more embodied with themselves. Breath helps you to live your true potential in that sense.
Yeah.
To just be able to stand for what you believe in and then bring that out into the world.
Welcome to the podcast The Embodiment Talks, a podcast by the Embodiment Lab with Marion van Opijnen. Taking your role as change agent of societal or education systems requires vision and courage. This podcast will help you take this pioneer's role with more body awareness and confidence, without losing sight of the connection with others. We dive into how we as humans are hardwired, how systems change works, and how both are related. I will take you on my own quest, and I will share background information, talk to experts, and share exercises. We will think, feel, and act. Great that you're here, and happy listening.
Hi there, here we are. I'm here today with Lisanne van Niekerk, and we are colleagues. And we've decided to have a conversation today about the value of embodiment and breathwork in sustainable innovations and or sustainable change. And so we both have a background in sustainability, and Lisanne worked at several governmental agencies. And we both breathwork, BBTRS, biodynamic breathwork practitioner, and we also have a broad background in embodiment. So there's a lot that we can share. We've decided not to make it an interview, but really to have a conversation about, about what actually is the value of embodiment and breathwork in societal change. So thanks, great. I'm really looking forward to have this conversation. And we already started a little bit at the when we were just preparing this talk, and I said, okay, maybe we should stop here so we can have this conversation, and you can actually enjoy us having this inquiry into this question.
Yes. Yeah. Great intro.
Yeah.
Let's continue.
Exactly. Let's go. Yeah, and I'm a little bit like, oh, okay, how am I actually going to start? Because we haven't really, I asked you, how am I going to introduce you? But not like, oh, how are we going to start? So that's the thing of not having a script and questions to ask. But when I asked you to do this, or when we were talking about this, you immediately said, yeah, that would be really nice to do. And what was really appealing for you in that? Why is it important to have this conversation?
Well, that's a great question, actually. I really like how you started the podcast and to create the combination of both breathwork and the societal transitions that we are in right now. Because I believe that the work that I do with breathwork is just a really tiny piece that can contribute to the bigger whole. And I really like to look at my work, but basically anything that I look at systematically, like from the tiny part into the whole part, and how everything works together. So I think it's a really important discussion to take it from the micro level, almost like the embodiment part, into the macro level, like, okay, what's happening in the society and how do they both contribute to each other? So that's why I was like, yes, let's do this. I'm really curious where this conversation is going to lead us. But we already talked about some things, and I think it's just a very interesting subject to discuss.
Yeah, and just to get to the same pace, if I think about embodiment, I think I see embodiment at several different levels, and one is to be able to contain whatever is present inside of myself in any situation. So also if it's a real challenging situation that, I can notice that and I can kind of contain myself so that I don't need to bring that immediately in the relation. That's one way. But the other thing is also like to tap into the embodied wisdom, like what my body actually tells me in what is happening in that system that I'm part of. Does that resonate with you, or do you have like another view on embodiment, or maybe an extra view as well?
Yeah, no, I share both of them. And I think for the first part you said, like, I'm able to contain it and not immediately let it go, and bring it into whatever situation is. I think it's also about being aware what's happening for you in that moment, and to be able to express that in a healthy way rather than explode or anything. So for me, it doesn't necessarily mean to be able to contain it, but to be able to express it also in a healthy way.
Yeah.
But
then first you need to contain it,
yeah,
so that
first
you kind of transform it into that healthy
yes.
expression.
Yeah, so you need to be able to feel it and get in touch with it, and realize, okay, this is going on for me right now. What can I do with this? Like, how does it feel in my body, and how can I express that in a way that actually helps me and the other, that perhaps triggers you, that causes whatever you're feeling in that moment. So being able to notice that and deal with that in a healthy way, and also to feel indeed, like to use that wisdom of the body and feel like what's going on for me, what's going on in the system, and everything that I feel, is it mine or is it not mine? I mean, for a very long time, I have walked around and I have felt so many things, and I thought it was all me, and apparently it wasn't. So being able to distinguish between, okay, what is mine and what is perhaps from a bigger system that I am in and also part of, is, I think, very, very helpful, to be able to use that wisdom that your body is picking up. And I think breath is a really good way to tap into that, and to do that self-inquiry as well. Like, okay, is it mine or is it not mine, or where is it coming from, what I'm sensing and feeling and living right now?
And so what you actually say is that the body is also the voice of the system.
Yeah, well, that's great. It's beautiful, actually.
Yeah. So it can be my voice, but it can also be the voice of the system.
Yeah.
And there. So and then I just inquire, what are the ways for me to know what is my voice? So where is it my reaction to something that happens, for example? So somebody reacts, and then I have a reaction to that, or is it like a bigger voice? And am I just the one who kind of notices it and can express that into the system towards others, for example? And that needs a lot of, what does it need? Mindfulness, breathwork,
self-awareness, knowing yourself. Like, okay, what are my triggers? What's my history?
Yeah.
How do I usually feel? And if it suddenly changes, you probably can already tell that it's not you, unless something changes for you instantly and you can explain, like, where is it coming from. I'll give you an example. Like, one thing one situation that I was in during my work. I was in a meeting and I was just typing everything that was going on. So I was like the secretary job for that meeting, and I was just typing what everybody was saying and the things we were agreeing upon. And at a certain point, I felt just this sort of like kind of angry thing and very insecure at the same time, and I was almost starting to tremble, and my heart was very heavy, and I was like, what's going on? I'm just typing. Nothing really weird was going on, also not in the conversation, especially not something that I was triggered by myself. And I was like, what is going on? Okay, just let's see what's happening. And it was like something that was boiling inside almost. And at a certain point, one of the members of the group that was having the meeting was standing up, and he was like walking around like an ice bear, back and forth, and I was like, something's going on with him. All right, let's see what's going on here. So I was just focusing on the rest of the conversation, and at a certain point he opened his mouth and told everybody where he was at and what he thought about it, and this all came out. And then he sat down, and I was like, and it was all okay again. And I was like, I was just picking up what he was feeling, and that was so insightful for me, because I knew that I was super sensitive to also other people around me. But to be able to just so directly feel that for him, what's going on, but not knowing at that time, like, where is this coming from? And this is also, like, this was a one-on-one thing or in a small group, but this is also happening in the bigger systems around us. We're just influenced by all of the energies that we cannot see, but we can feel it with our body. So I think that's just such an interesting way of wisdom that we all have, that we're not really accustomed to. And we're not really sure how we can deal with it, because we just don't learn it when we're young, right? You don't learn, like, something you can feel might not be yours. Be aware that you know the difference between that.
Yeah, and especially the difference, because then it's very easy to start blaming the system. Like, whatever I feel, there's something there that is not right. And that kind of prevents me from actually inquiring into my own feelings and what is mine and what is the systems. And I think that is a very fine line. And I also recognize I often, when something happens, I usually take it back to myself, and I may have said something, or maybe I'm triggered by something, and I can just continue reflecting on that. And then at one point I think, like, okay, but what is actually really going on here? But to check that in the system is also very important. Not just to take it for granted that, okay, then it must be the system.
And that's super important. And I think that especially people that are sensitive to things that are bigger than themselves, they have an amazing tool where they can voice what's actually happening, and also see and check if other people around them feel the same thing, because usually people do, but they are not really sure what's going on, or they're blaming themselves indeed, or they're like, okay, I'm not really sure how to voice this. So if you are able to do that, you're actually helping the system transform and make it lighter, or let like compromised feelings or helped feelings surface, so you can transform them into something more helpful.
Yeah. And how do you teach that to people?
That's a good question. Actually, I'm not really teaching that right now, but what I am, because this is like the bigger whole that we're talking about right now, but where I start is the breath work, usually. The breath work and body work, getting in touch with your own breath, your own breath patterns, and your own emotions and feelings that you have. And when you are more aware of those, like, you're more in sync with and your head and your heart and your whole body, and it's more of a symbiosis rather than the head takes it over, because that's usually what happens in our society and how we're raised in the schooling systems. It's like head, we have to think all the day, and we kind of forget the heart and the body. But when people learn more to get more in balance with that, you can start to practice how to use that for yourself, and then in bigger systems, like starting in smaller groups, but also then in your work, and perhaps even bigger. And that's at least how my own journey was when I started doing breath work. This was really a revelation for me, that, well, just first of all, learning all of my emotions and to be able to distinguish them and express them in a more healthy way, because at a certain point in time I could not feel, for instance, anger. I was like, angry? Yeah, I know it's an emotion, angry. But I'm never angry. Like, what's the use of being angry, right?
Yeah.
But this is also a conditioning that we have gotten culturally. Like, you have to be a good little girl, you cannot be angry. Which is something that our parents, of course, we're also not aware of that they gave that to us. So it's not a blame game, but it's not something that we are learning as kids. Like, how can you express anger in a good way? So that
it's an interesting one, emotions, but anger in particular, because it's not indeed very accepted. Maybe even as a woman, it's even less maybe accepted than as a male to express anger, where it's so natural and there's so much power in it.
So much power, yeah.
And I think, as what I also experienced in making change in the system, you experience so much resistance or fear, or like everything that goes out of the dialogue. So if I want to bring something new, or if I want to discuss some part of the system that I think like, is that really, how we want it to be, then often I encounter emotions like fear or anger. I mean, it's not that people start crying in front of me, but these two are very common. And yeah, where am I going to with this?
Well, this is where breathwork comes in.
Yeah, exactly. To get to know them better. But what I was going to say is that they also have an effect on your body. So if I have to change, and I think many of the people listening to this podcast, they have been in organizations where there's been organizational change or whatever, and we all have been in those kind of situations where there is a larger context where there's change, and that there is a lot of resistance, and which is then based on either anger or fear, or the fear is underlying the anger or whatever, and it has an impact on the body.
Yep.
Like as soon as that happens, it kind of contracts the body, and our whole vision, everything kind of narrows. So it becomes even harder to listen to the other.
Yeah.
And in that situation, you have a receptive partner. You have like the person that takes the initiative or whatever, and both they have to be able to deal with those kind of emotions, to either receive them in yourself. It's kind of very scary to kind of stand up and say something that what you think should change or whatever. So it's containing your own emotions, and it is containing the emotions of others that come towards you. Yeah, and that is indeed where breathwork comes in. So how has it helped you? Because you said it was such a big thing for me to go into that. So how has it helped you?
Well, first of all, it's helped me to get out of a burnout that was lingering already for 5 years plus. That what started in my studies and continued in the first few years of work, and by getting in touch with breathwork, and specifically the biodynamic breathwork and trauma release system that we both practice, this really helped me to release so many layers of held tension, physically, literally, but also after that I felt so much more free, both physically but also mentally and emotionally, because so many layers were like peeled away that I didn't need anymore. And I could see also certain patterns that I had cultivated that were really not helping. I was super perfectionistic, for instance, and well, I just was holding so many balls in the air trying to, and it just didn't work for me. So I could also lower a little bit on that. I won't say it's gone, but still I get the insights to see, okay, what's going on right now, and what can I do to deal with that. And after the first training that I did, I also was not afraid anymore to fall back into the burnout, because I was walking on the edge, really to kind of hold myself together all the time, and then I was able to produce good work and I got the compliments, but inside I did not feel right. It just didn't feel right. So I was really happy with that. So I decided to actually do the full studies with biodynamic breath work, and and also bring that in my own company that I have now. So it's one of the basic pillars that I use for the trainings I give with people. But I also combine that with like part of vitality and personal leadership, because I think it's really important what you say when you're in a discussion, and in also talking and thinking about how to transform or how to bring in new things that like we're looking at with our system changes now. You need to be able to contain yourself and the group, actually all of you. So what I have found for myself, how breathwork worked for me in those situations that I encountered in my work or also in my own company right now, like in those moments, it's really important to just consciously breathe deeply to the belly, to be able to literally calm the nervous system. Because what happens when we encounter stressors or our emotions like anger, or like this is also stress, literally our body produces a hormone cocktail that causes us to contract and to not breathe fully.
Your veins
your veins get contracted, and like physically we cannot breathe as deep anymore, so we cannot have the full oxygen assimilation. So it's not really helpful for our vitality in that moment, or for the way we think, because like literally, as you said, the vision narrows. And when you are aware of that and you're able to just breathe in that moment, you can send opposite signals to your brain that it is okay, that it is safe in that moment to be able to talk about these things, and that you're in a safe place in that moment, where that helps to actually open up the veins again and to be able to breathe more, which will give you more oxygen and just more physical space to think and to have those discussions and ideas, and to be able to just open up and connect with the other as well, even if it's super exciting or scary. And I think it's really needed, because it is exciting and scary where we are at right now, right? Because change is always something that is kind of scary and exciting at the same time, but it's not necessarily something that people really crave. Yeah. Even though we think we want change, when it actually comes, usually people do this, myself included. So it's really important to just be able to breathe in those moments, to be able to face the change and to enjoy it actually in the end.
Yeah, and it helps me also if we all have that chattering voice.
Tells
all those things like you're not good enough, or you're talking too much, or you're talking too little. You know, we always get that huge commentary. Like, no, I was just tuning in with myself as well, like how I'm regulating myself in this particular moment, because, you know, there's a video on, and I feel scary. Kind of vulnerable in having this conversation, and I can notice that voice coming up, and I think it doesn't serve me in this moment, because if I let that voice take me somewhere, I get into my head, and I really start to doing the best I can to make this a very useful conversation and what have you. So I notice that even in this moment, I kind of park that voice for a bit. I notice it, and I know it doesn't serve me, and I focus on my body to really stay here present in this conversation, to listen to what you're saying, and to kind of surrender by focusing on my body into, and I don't know what is coming next. And if I go with that voice somewhere, then I get more in a stress, because I need to know what's coming next, and then I need to have a good question or a new topic or whatever. And the decision to just let it flow as where it wants to go. But I do notice it takes a conscious effort, and to breathe into that, to stay in my body. So the breath for me is now also like an anchor in the moment. Like, okay, with every breath, I can just sink into my body.
And it's a constant practice, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah. And also how easy it is to kind of let yourself flow off with however you think it should be. instead of what is actually present in the moment.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Just to, and I think as a change agent in society, this is what is constantly happening in our bodies, and we kind of expose ourselves to it. Although, you know, it happens for everybody. Like even on the street, if you see a face of somebody, that can already be a trigger, just the look or what have you. But as change agents, you actually put yourself in the situation where you all the time have to kind of speak up, notice. So you invite stressors all the time. And then it's probably even more important to be aware of your bodily reaction to that, because that's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to contain that, to stay present, and to see what's happening in that relation, rather than getting into a mindy voice chatters anyway. So
yeah, it's great to be able to park it somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. yeah. Which of course doesn't always work.
No.
Sometimes better than other times.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that kind of has an influence on that.
Yeah, so you were saying, like, especially the people who are stepping forward all the time, they expose themselves more to these stressors. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think it's also from my own experience that I'm often the person noticing, like what you shared about that guy. You already noticed it even before he stood up and started walking around, and I'm often the person that kind of speaks out if I think things are not right or something like that. And what was your question?
Yeah, when you place yourself in the front, when you speak out, for instance, like how can embodiment, for instance, help in that? You already gave it a little bit of an answer, but
so it's actually what I just said as well. It's that first of all, I use my body by feeling that there's things happening there that have an impact on me, and that is where it starts. Just to feel in what actually happens inside of me, to know what's happening outside of me, and then from there, it's a choice to use it or not. Like if I'm really triggered, so if something comes in and I'm really triggered, there's often only one way out, and that is to kind of put it back out there. So if I get angry or get sad, or I just put it out there, or I completely
what do you
dissociate.
Mean you put it out there?
Like, that you get angry, or you start crying or something.
Out.
You kind of throw it out. Or I kind of dissociate, or people can dissociate. It's kind of actually two moves, of course, that we can have. We can kind of either fight, or we can flight,
it's
or
like
we
the
freeze.
Introvert and the extrovert version.
I don't know whether that's always that the extrovert would always act out and the introvert would always.
I think it's more of an affinity of what you naturally do more.
Probably.
Yeah, because I'm an introvert, so I really recognize the retreat version.
I don't really identify with like the extrovert or introvert. I can see myself in different situations being either one of the two. I never also really dived into that whole concept, I have to be honest about. So it's an interesting, could even be another inquiry into like, is that always related? But anyway, let's not go there.
No.
I mean, there's two primary reactions, or three. So the first, if we get triggered, the first thing we do is to kind of see like, okay, is the environment safe? Can I relate to somebody? So we bring in that social engagement. If not, we either go and fight or we flight. And if that doesn't work, then we kind of freeze. And we have those reactions already prepared in ourselves. Like based on all our experience that we have indeed a preference in the first reaction that we give. And so if I'm triggered, if something happens, or I put myself out in the open to kind of express something in a system that I feel is not right, then I always put myself in the situation that I can be targeted by others. Others can resist, others can just disappear, which also does something in the relation, and that really requires me to stay embodied, to see what's happening inside of me, to because the more present I am and the more grounded I am in whatever I have to say, the more authentic it will be, the easier it will be for people to receive. I will be more open for a dialogue. I will resonate with what's happening on the other side, so I can play into that. And I can even sometimes make it verbal, like, okay, I see that you shocked, or I see that you kind of move away or disappear or whatever, to bring back the conversation and to bring back the relation. Because if I want to make change, if I don't keep the other in at least a kind of safe feeling, or a safe environment, is how we can experience it, then I'm sure that I will lose the others.
Yeah, so it's really important what you're saying. Like when you are embodied yourself, you're actually also allowing the other ones to receive the information that you share, and also to reply to that from a safe place, being able to actually invite them also to be more embodied with themselves. Yeah, perhaps because you give the example, right? That's
and it's to realize as well that we kind of shake on their we shake their system on their basis, and that is a trigger for most people.
Definitely.
So how does that work for you?
Yeah, similarly, I guess, because I have also found at certain points I was able to feel what was going on. In one of the other meetings that I was in, we were with a really big group of about 30 people, and it was one big, how do you say, afdeling?
Department.
One big department, and people actually did not want to be one department. So there was a lot of under the surface going on, and I was totally fine, had my lunch, walked into the meeting, and my body immediately started shaking when I walked into the room, and I was like, whoa, what's going on here? So I just listened to the whole conversation, and in the meantime kept shaking. Trying to pick up like what's going on, how can I be helpful here, like this instrument of mine is telling me something, I want to share that also. So at a certain point I talked like, okay, I'm not really sure what's going on right here, but there's definitely something's going on underneath the surface, but physically this is what it is doing to me. So I was describing my physical sensations and signals, and I could not literally translate that into what was happening, but I was kind of asking for like, does anybody recognize this? Like, do you have a similar feeling, or what's going on? But at that moment, it was way, way, way too scary for people to react. So what happened after I shared this was complete silence for about a minute or so. And I felt super strong in that silence because I had shared what was going on for me, which was really speaking to my truth. And I could feel that it was doing a lot in the room. The shaking had stopped for me. and I could feel changes. And then the leader of the group was kind of starting to pick up again, kind of ignoring what I had said, actually, trying to finish the meeting altogether. And then after the meeting, a lot of people actually came to me like, wow, what you said was so true. Like, I experienced this and this. And so it stirred up a lot. But people did not feel safe enough in that bigger space to say, yes, I experienced similar things, or I think this is going on, or this is going on for me. But afterwards, I think certainly 7 or 8 people came to me to just talk about this. So that was really insightful, and this was of course a big process, and one meeting in a big process. But this is also what started also to get more movement in that process, for at least for me, but also for some people around me. And but it was pretty scary, because even though I was embodied in that moment, I could not provide safety for everybody. But if people cannot provide safety for themselves, it's also not up to me to provide that safety, but it's an invitation to be vulnerable. And that invitation is then there, and people actually took that invitation, but then in a smaller setting, to actually start open up.
Yeah, that's what happens often, that then people in a smaller setting
but
open up.
Those are first steps. So I think it was good.
But sometimes it can give me a feeling as well that you're so alone in kind of speaking out.
Yes, it felt pretty alone.
Then in the end, it appears that you're not alone at all. But in the exposure, you are alone and you remain alone. So
I did not feel supported at all in that moment.
No. And so it's so important to create that safe space that people dare to speak out. And that really depends a lot on the culture where we come from.
And I think that's a very important role, especially for managers and people who are in charge, to be able to provide that safe space for the people that they work with, and that they're kind of responsible for. Of course, they're not responsible for them individually, but as a manager, it's really important to create that space so that your team can thrive in the end, right? Because that's what you want.
But it's interesting because you can never take people that far further than that you've been yourself.
No.
So if you don't know how to create safety for yourself and how to be embodied yourself, you can never take people to be there.
No.
So in that sense, it's very important that any leader, like any change agent, any leader and a manager, does his or her own work.
Yeah.
And then just to have a last few minutes on breath work, because we haven't spoken much about breath work yet, and that is definitely what we share, where we met as well. So
where we had lots of fun.
Yeah, exactly. So it's maybe nice to see how we have already touched a little bit upon, like, okay, if we're unstressed and kind of the veins, they even contract, and there's hormones, and that affect the breath. And so how can breath work actually help us to be more embodied and to open up, to do our own work, so that we can be the change agent that we want to be?
Yeah. So first of all, let's say there are many different types of breath work, going from like just breathe in, breathe out for a few moments to very deep breath work where you have a breathing process for hours. And the biodynamic breath work is definitely a deeper breathing process. But I think also even with simple breathing exercises that you would perhaps find in yogic tradition or in a yoga class, for me it really helps me to bring myself in the moment, in the here and now, to leave the chatter voices behind, to park them somewhere, and to just sense into my breath. And with that there is automatic movement, because you breathe in, there's movement expanding, and breathe out, there's movement just coming back again. And with that you get a sense of your body and how your body is actually feeling, so you get a chance to check in with yourself. When you do that often enough, you start to learn, okay, how am I actually usually feeling. And just by knowing that, you get to know yourself a bit better, or you get to see your mind patterns that come along anyway, because they're not gone. So in that sense, the breath has really helped me to get to know myself, and especially the deeper breath work, where you intentionally also start to expand your breathing capacity and release physical patterns that are stuck, help me to just release chronic tension from my body. So also the patterns that we are building up in our system to help us survive, they might have helped us survive when we were little, but when we were adults, they might not help us so much anymore. So just to be able to look at them and to change them in more helpful patterns, this has been a key for me, where breathwork has helped me do that. And bringing in that awareness to, even when it's not so safe, to share what is actually physically going on, like in the meeting I was talking about, to be able to be with that and to just breathe through it is just so valuable.
Yeah, and to add to that, it also brings you to your own safety.
Yeah.
So even if the environment is not that safe, and still to dare to speak out and expose yourself to that, because you know that there is a safe haven at home here in the body.
It's your inner truth.
Yeah.
Like what you feel is right. What is you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Is there more that we want to say about that? Just tune into that.
Let's just take a breath.
Yeah. Take a many.
I think this last part that you said is super, super valuable when you look at the system transitions that are going on, to be able to stay connected to yourself and your own truth, and to go what you're believing in, even though not everybody agrees with you yet, because it's also a matter of time to just get the crowds convinced.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that your ideas are not right yet, or it allows you to continue and not quit, I guess.
So to rely on the inner wisdom, knowing that it is, in a way, it's right. It's never the truth, because I don't think that's exactly. It's my truth, and we all look at the system from a different angle. So we all see different things, and others see things that I may not see. But to stay true to at least what I see from my position in the system and how I look onto the system, to stay true to that, and at the same time to stay open and connected to the other, to listen to the other's truth as well, so that together we can kind of make a bigger truth of all the different perspectives and come to change from that bigger platform of truth, or however you want to call it.
I think basically also the breath helps you to live your true potential in that sense.
Yeah.
To just be able to stand for what you believe in, and then bring that out into the world.
Okay, great.
This was fun.
There's still so much more to talk about, but I think we just give it an end here, and we can always continue another time to explore more of this, because it's nice to have kind of more those explorative conversations where together, and that's what systems change is about, to make it bigger together than that each of us can do. So thank you, Lisanne.
Thank you.
And let's turn off the camera.
Great that you listened to this episode of the Embodiment Talks. Please let me know your thoughts about this episode or the insights that you gained. Email me to the address in the show notes. If you want to get in touch with me, or if you have a question or topic that you want to know more about, don't hesitate to send me an email as well. Do you want to be kept up to date? Like this podcast in your favorite podcast app. You can help me by giving a thumbs up or leaving a comment, so that this podcast will reach more people. You can find more information about my work on my website www.embodimentlab.nl or my YouTube channel Embodiment Lab. Thanks for listening, and meet you at the next episode.